study of masonry deals with how to manage people, how to manage all the communication skills, government, banking, numerology, worldwide. It doesn't matter what your language is, all world leaders belong to the Masonic order, and they act together.
When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. That's why we had a barrel like this down in our basement, filled with cans of food and water. When the nuclear attack came, we were supposed to go downstairs, hunker down, and eat out of that barrel. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
It can tonight reveal the true extent of germ warfare tests carried out in the southwest. Government documents show much of North and South Devon and parts of Somerset were used for experiments similar to those conducted off the Dorset coast during the 1960s.
An independent inquiry has already been ordered into the Dorset trials to determine whether or not they've affected people's health. In a few minutes, we'll be speaking exclusively to the man in charge of this inquiry. But first, our environment correspondent, Simon Hall, has this special report, which includes film of the trials never previously seen on television.
The germ warfare trials, carried out in the 1960s and 70s, were highly secret. This, previously unreleased film of the experiments as they happened. Their existence was revealed last year when secret documents were declassified. They were thought to be carried out mainly in Dorset. A spotlight investigation has, though, discovered they were far more widespread than was previously thought. Other trials tested how the germs would survive in different conditions in different areas. These were based not on releasing a gas, but instead on exposing a narrow thread of material coated with E. coli to the air. These tests were carried out in January 1967. The threads were exposed first from a ship just off Ilfracombe, then on 5 other sites running through Somerset down to the sea off Dorset.
I think people, when they come to hear of this, will be concerned. For instance, I was in my 20s at this time, in the 60s, and I was just getting married, starting up a family. They'll be worried, will this have any implications on their health or the health of their children?
Concerns have been raised that the tests may have harmed people's health. In East Lulworth, in Dorset, 21 families say they have experienced miscarriages and children being born handicapped and with other health problems. Robin Southey was one of the scientists who carried out the experiments. His widow, Anne Reed, is pressing the government for a full investigation into the trials. For Robin Southey died at the age of 33 from a rare disease which led to a perforated stomach. His immune system was said to be almost ineffective. The couple had 2 sons. One died at 17 from a brain tumour. The other suffers serious health problems. The government has always maintained the trials were safe.
Are supercharged lab-enhanced viruses becoming a global threat?
Gain-of-function research?
Gain-of-function.
So-called gain-of-function research, known as gain-of-function.
The controversy around so-called gain-of-function research has erupted alongside the heated debate around the coronavirus pandemic's origin.
It's a tale of 2 theories.
A lot of Democrats poo-pooed the whole idea of the lab leak.
Prominent public health experts saying that the lab leak theory, which was previously hawked by conspiracy theorists, might actually be credible.
This has moved high-risk gain-of-function research from the secretive shadows into the public spotlight. We've set out to investigate why, how, and where this type of research is being done, and what the risks and benefits are.
So what exactly is gain-of-function? It is a type of research that makes pathogens like viruses deadlier or more infectious to humans. The researchers intentionally modify the virus in lab experiments to give it new functions. For instance, the ability to spread by air or attack human nerve cells. Gain-of-function research seeks to make a virus more easily transmissible between humans, to increase the severity of the disease it triggers, or to make it resistant to existing treatments or vaccines. Sounds crazy?
2 main reasons are given for why this type of research is done. One is to better predict which viruses in animal populations might one day naturally mutate and become infectious for humans. The second is to be better prepared when a new pandemic hits, for instance by already developing a vaccine for it preemptively.
There are obviously valid reasons for gain-of-function research, and the main reason is to understand pathogens better, to understand the way they transmit and behave, and thereby to make vaccines, drugs, etc.
So how many vaccines have been developed as a result of gain-of-function research?
None. There have been no preemptive vaccines to date.
Have any pandemics been prevented thanks to gain-of-function research?
The answer is not that I know of.
Not that I'm aware.
What's clear is that it didn't prevent this coronavirus pandemic.
Actually, none of the gain-of-function research that was done over the past decades or whatever, none of it contributed to finding a vaccine or cure for SARS-CoV-2, for COVID-19.
Some scientists think this is a perfectly legitimate endeavor. Others say it's akin to checking for a gas leak by holding a match to the gas pipe. In the effort to protect us from a pandemic, scientists could cause a pandemic.
So let's look a bit more closely at how gain-of-function research is done. One method is to genetically re-engineer pathogens by inserting genes from one virus into another to make it more aggressive.
Another, simpler method is called animal passaging. Researchers inject a virus into ferrets or so-called humanized mice. These mice have been genetically manipulated to have human lung receptors. The virus undergoes slight mutations as it passes through several generations of mice. The scientists select the strongest mutations until the virus eventually becomes transmissible to humans.
The scientific technology today is so good that you can make a whole genome of a virus with no scars, no seams or anything. It looks perfectly natural.
In 2011, an extreme gain-of-function experiment rocked the science world. Scientists used the serial passaging method to make the H5N1 avian flu virus more transmissible to humans. The lead scientist, Ron Fouchier, claimed he created one of the most dangerous viruses you can make.
They had taken a virus that was deadly but not good at infecting humans and made it also very infectious. So that kind of research, I think, is the risks are immensely high. If it broke out, there would be just widespread death. But the benefits, what are they? Many scientists look at this experiment and they think, why? Why did you do this?
The thing with the avian flu is that it is extremely deadly, with an infection fatality rate of approximately 60%. Compare that to a rate of under 1% for COVID-19. Luckily, this virus hasn't leaked from a lab so far.
High-security BSL-4 labs built for research on highly infectious pathogens are booming around the world, and 3/4 of them are located in densely populated urban areas. Gain-of-function research is being conducted in some of these labs in the US, China, Europe, and other countries, although nobody knows for sure in how many of them. But surprisingly, gain-of-function experiments are not done exclusively in highest-security BSL-4 labs. Some are done in level 2 and 3 labs.
We recently found out that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was doing a lot of this SARS-like virus research at a very low biosafety level. So at a level that you would feel unsafe working with airborne viruses. At BSL-2, you may or may not be wearing a lab coat. You definitely should be wearing gloves, but normally you don't wear a mask at BSL-2. So if you're working with airborne viruses, live viruses at BSL-2, viruses that can spread through the air, like SARS-CoV-2, then you are completely exposed. It was not an appropriate biosafety level for working with these SARS-like viruses.
Researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were collecting and researching bad coronaviruses and using humanized mice prior to the COVID-19 outbreak. But the top researcher, Dr. Shizeng Li, denies she was conducting gain-of-function research.
We know from all of the records, from the NIH grant applications, from papers published by the Wuhan Institute of Virology experts, that they were engaged in aggressive research and aggressive work that was making scary pathogenic viruses scarier, better able to infect human cells.
Dr. She says, we did not do gain-of-function research to increase infectivity, right? She picked out just the one. No, she didn't do to increase infectivity. She did to change the host range, to make it infectious to us.
Making the disease the virus triggers more deadly is one possible aim of gain-of-function research. Another is to make a virus that would normally only attack animals better able to infect a different type of host, humans. What is making things murky is that different definitions of gain-of-function are circulating simultaneously.
The reason why it's so confusing and so complicated is because scientists do not know where to draw the line between regular experiments and gain-of-function experiments that are very concerning.
So it's only when there is a potential to cause harm to humans that it becomes gain-of-function research of concern.
But the question into the origins of the pandemic were stifled in early 2020 when an open letter was published in the medical journal, The Lancet. That effectively snuffed out all the debate.
They were very well intentioned, but even in the name of those good intentions, engaged in what I call scientific propaganda and thuggery designed to drive consensus when the evidence didn't support that consensus.
It was basically trying to shut any scientific debate, and it was quite obvious because there is no way you can reach these conclusions when you don't have data.
People said that's a conspiracy theory. That's no conspiracy theory. That's an honest scientific possibility.
If this came from a lab, that means that science has led to millions of people dying by accident. So it's a very uncomfortable thing to think about. It's a very unpleasant idea for scientists.
It wasn't until a group of citizen journalists began to investigate and analyze online databases that the lab leak theory re-emerged. The group, calling themselves Drastic, revealed that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was actively working with SARS-CoV-2 viruses over many years, including the closest known relative to the pandemic virus, using inadequate safety protocols. They also discovered that the lab and Chinese authorities have methodically attempted to conceal these activities.
I start to get suspicious and start to investigate.
You have to play games to try to, get the data. And China is really good at removing things, but if you get there on time, you can get an awful lot.
There's been a lot of important information that's come out as a result of what they're calling internet sleuths, but it's people who are just recognizing that our world is at risk and our governments and the UN system weren't doing what needed to be done.
When the WHO looked into the question in early 2021, it concluded that a lab leak was extremely unlikely. But the report was criticized due to the team's lack of access to key data. President Biden has since asked US intelligence agencies to look into the matter, but so far there has been no thorough international investigation.
Up to now, we have not had an investigation of the origins of COVID-19. The China WHO joint study has been widely described as an investigation by a lot of media, but they admit that they never had the mandate and they never had the powers or influence to be able to go in there and investigate. So all the evidence right now is circumstantial. We need to have a credible investigation.
If it does turn out that this pandemic was caused by a lab leak, it's going to change the practice of virology forever, everywhere.
Although the lab leak theory has recently gained traction, there is still no definitive proof of either a market origin or a lab leak, and both theories remain plausible. But the whole controversy around the origin of the coronavirus has deflected from the larger and arguably more important question, whether high-risk research with deadly pathogens should be pursued at all.
The reason being that accidents happen, and they happen a lot, even from the highest security labs.
And it happens all over the world, internationally, not any one particular country.
As a result of a slew of accidents in US labs involving bird flu, Ebola, and anthrax, in 2014, the Obama administration put a moratorium on gain-of-function research. But the ban was full of loopholes.
First of all, it was a funding moratorium. You could go on working. If you had money from someplace else, from some other government, or out of your own university, you could go and do what you want. And of course, people went all over the world and continued to do it.
the US moratorium, however limited, was lifted in 2017. But even if there are demonstrable and important scientific gains resulting from this type of research, the question remains, are the risks worth it?
The technology has just leapt ahead way beyond the governance. Our governance of these things is sitting in the last century, right? But the technology has just steamed ahead.
It cannot be that individual scientists are making species-wide decisions. That doesn't mean there's not a very important role for scientists, but we need to have broader, more inclusive, more democratic frameworks for figuring out the best ways forward.
I think the public needs to be involved. So definitely this problem should not be regulated by scientists and then performed by scientists ourselves. So because the outcomes of a pandemic, it's not just that only scientists get sick, everybody gets sick. So it affects the whole globe. That's why this sort of research where the risks are extremely high, they need to be discussed with non-scientists as well.
There should be transparency. It is not normal that the public didn't know before what was gain of function. The society has the right to know what is being done.
The worst case scenario is we have another pandemic that's much worse than this one, and we're entering the age of synthetic biology where it's easy to imagine a much more dangerous pathogen than the one we are facing now. This could be a life or death moment for our species, and we have this opportunity of this pandemic, as terrible as it's been, to learn the lessons. And to learn those lessons, we need to do a fearless examination of what went wrong.
With the growing number of labs in the world now working with these dangerous pathogens, collecting them, studying them, maybe doing a bit of gain of functional research with them, we are entering an era where it's quite likely that there will be a lab-based pandemic. And if we don't deal with that, we're just flying blind.
Regardless of the true origins of the COVID-19 virus, which we may never know for sure, society still needs to grapple with where to draw the line for research that's done with good intentions and in good faith, but that could put all of humanity at risk if anything goes wrong.